Her billionaire husband framed her for fraud and let her rot in prison. 5 years later, she returned to find her best friend wearing her ring and her kids calling another woman MOM. The television in the prison common room flickered with breaking news coverage. Fiona sat frozen in her plastic chair, hands trembling around a cup of lukewarm coffee. On the screen, her best friend Joan stood in a white wedding gown, radiant and glowing. An inmate nearby whistled low. "That's your girl, ain't it?" Fiona couldn't answer, couldn't breathe, because there, on Joan's finger, catching the light of 1,000 camera flashes, was her ring. The one Nathan had designed. The one he'd slipped onto Fiona's finger 7 years ago on a rooftop at sunrise, promising her forever. The news anchor's voice filled the room with practiced enthusiasm. After the devastating betrayal by his first wife, billionaire Nathan Jones has found love again with longtime friend Joan Clark. The couple wed this evening in what can only be described as a fairy tale ceremony. The camera cut to Nathan in his tuxedo, looking every bit the devoted groom. When asked how he found love again after such heartbreak, he smiled that smile Fiona used to believe was only for her. "Joan showed me that it's possible to trust again," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "After everything Fiona put me through, put our children through, I didn't think I could ever open my heart. But Joan was there. She never gave up on me." The camera panned to Joan, who dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I just wanted to help a friend," she whispered. "I never imagined we'd fall in love. But sometimes the most beautiful things come from the darkest moments." Another inmate turned to Fiona. "Girl, you good? You need me to turn this off?" Fiona's voice came out steady, eerily calm. "Turn it off." No one moved. Everyone was watching her now, waiting for the breakdown they all knew was coming. "I said turn it off." Still, the television blared. Still, Joan's face filled the screen, wearing Fiona's life like a costume. Something inside Fiona snapped. "I said turn it off." She threw the cup. It hit the television screen and shattered. Coffee dripped down Joan's televised face like tears. Guards rushed in as Fiona lunged forward, screaming words that had been trapped in her chest for 8 months. Hands grabbed her, pulled her back, forced her to the ground. She fought them, fought with the strength of a woman who had nothing left to lose. They dragged her to solitary confinement, her screams echoing down the concrete hallways. But here's what Nathan and Joan didn't know. Here's what they couldn't have predicted. You can't kill a woman who's already been destroyed. You can only create someone with nothing left to lose. And 3 years later, when Fiona walked into Nathan's global expansion gala wearing the same emerald dress she'd worn the night of her arrest, she didn't come for revenge. She came for resurrection. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how Fiona became the woman who burned an empire to the ground, you need to know how she became the woman who built one in the first place. You need to know what it feels like to trust someone so completely that you'd sign away your freedom without reading the fine print. You need to know what real betrayal looks like when it's wearing the face of love. So let me take you back. Back to when Fiona still believed in fairy tales. Back to the moment a spilled cup of coffee changed the trajectory of her entire life. Before we dive deep into this story, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever trusted someone who destroyed you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from absolutely nothing, I need you to hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Or just say, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because we're about to walk through fire together, and I need to know you're ready." Now, let me show you where it all began. The first time Fiona saw Nathan Jones, she was about to ruin his life. Or at least that's what she thought. It was finals week at Harbor State University. The library had that specific kind of chaos that only happens when hundreds of sleep-deprived students are surviving on caffeine and desperation. Fiona had been awake for somewhere close to 48 hours, running on her third large caramel latte and the stubborn belief that if she studied hard enough, she could memorize an entire semester's worth of business management in 3 days. She'd commandeered a study table near the economics section, surrounded by a fortress of textbooks, highlighters, and crumpled energy bar wrappers. Her eyes were burning. Her brain was full. She needed a break, needed to move, Needed to get more coffee even though her hands were already shaking from too much caffeine. She stood up too fast. The world tilted slightly. She grabbed her cup and turned toward the stairs. That's when she saw the backpack. Someone had left it right in the middle of the walkway, a hazard waiting to happen. Fiona's exhausted brain registered it half a second too late. Her foot caught the strap. Her body lurched forward, and her large caramel latte, still 3/4 full, launched itself through the air in perfect, horrible slow motion. It landed directly on the laptop of the guy studying at the corner table. Fiona watched in complete horror as coffee flooded across his keyboard, dripped onto his notes, pooled around his textbooks. The guy looked up slowly from the disaster unfolding on his desk. And he laughed. Not a polite chuckle. Not an awkward attempt to defuse tension. A real, genuine laugh that lit up his entire face. "Oh my God," Fiona gasped, grabbing napkins from her table and rushing over. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for everything. Your laptop, your books, I'll replace all of it." She was frantically dabbing at his computer, trying to stop the coffee from seeping into the keys, mentally calculating how many shifts she'd need to pick up at her campus job to afford a laptop replacement. The guy gently caught her wrist, still smiling. "It's okay. It's not okay. I just destroyed your computer. You probably just saved me from myself," he said, looking at his coffee-soaked notes. "I've been staring at these thermodynamics equations for 6 hours. I think the universe is telling me it's time for a break." Fiona finally looked at him. Really looked at him. He had kind eyes. That was the first thing she noticed. Warm brown eyes with little crinkles at the corners from smiling. Dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. A worn college hoodie with coffee stains that suggested this wasn't his first caffeine-related incident. And a face that was somehow both familiar and completely new, like coming home to a place she'd never been. "I'm Fiona," she said, still holding a wad of soaked napkins. "Nathan." He extended his hand. It was sticky with coffee, and when she shook it, they both started laughing. They spent the next 10 minutes trying to salvage his notes. Most of them were ruined. His laptop wouldn't turn on. By all rights, he should have been furious. Instead, he kept making jokes about finally having an excuse to give up on thermodynamics. "What's your major?" Fiona asked, gathering the dripping papers into a trash pile. "Engineering. Computer science focus." "You?" "Business management." Fiona made a face, which is ironic, considering I just mismanaged my coffee right onto your entire academic life. Nathan grinned. "How about this? You buy me a coffee to replace the one you just weaponized, and we call it even." "That's not even close to even. Your laptop alone probably cost one coffee," he interrupted. "That's my price. Take it or leave it." Fiona studied his face, looking for the anger or frustration that had to be hiding somewhere. But there was nothing. Just genuine amusement and something else. Something that made her pulse quicken. "One coffee," she agreed. They walked to the 24-hour cafe on the edge of campus. By the time they got there, they were already talking like old friends. He told her about his dream of building technology that would revolutionize how people connect. She told her about wanting to create something real, something that mattered beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. They ordered coffee, found a booth in the corner, and talked, and talked, and talked. When Fiona finally checked her phone, the sun was coming up. They'd been talking for 7 hours straight. "Oh my God," she breathed, staring at the pink and gold sky visible through the cafe windows. "I had an exam in 3 hours. "Same," Nathan said. He didn't look concerned. He was looking at her the way people look at something precious they've unexpectedly found. They walked back across campus together as the world woke up around them. Birds singing. Sprinklers turning on across the quad. The first ambitious students already heading to early classes. Nathan stopped at the steps of the business building where they needed to part ways. Fiona lived in the dorms on the east side. Nathan had an apartment near the engineering labs. "So," he said, hands in his pockets, "I'm going to build something that changes the world." Fiona smiled, exhausted and buzzing with something that had nothing to do with caffeine. "That's a pretty big goal." "I know. He stepped closer. But standing here right now, watching the sunrise with you after the best-worst study break of my life, I actually believe I can do it. Then you will, Fiona said. And she meant it. She didn't know why, but standing there in the early morning light, she believed every word. I'm going to need help, Nathan said softly. Someone who sees the bigger picture. Someone who believes in building something real. Then I'll be right there with you. He kissed her. Just leaned in and kissed her as the sun came up over Harbor State University. As students rushed past them toward finals, they'd probably both fail. As the world kept spinning and their lives changed direction in a single, perfect moment. When they pulled apart, Nathan was smiling. So, do I get a do-over on that coffee? Since we never actually drank the ones we bought? Fiona laughed. You can have all the coffee you want. Forever. Forever. I like the sound of that. 3 years later, Nathan proposed on that same rooftop where they'd had their first real date. The date that happened after they both spectacularly failed their finals and had to retake them over the summer. The date where Nathan had brought Chinese takeout and string lights, and they'd talked until dawn again, mapping out futures that seemed impossibly bright. Now, Nathan knelt on that rooftop with a ring he'd designed himself. It wasn't extravagant. They were still broke college students trying to launch a startup from Nathan's apartment. But it was beautiful. A simple band with a small emerald stone, Fiona's birthstone, set in a design that looked like circuitry. It's not much right now, Nathan said, hands shaking slightly. But one day, I'm going to give you everything. The life you deserve. The world. Fiona was already crying. I don't need the world, Nathan. I just need you. Marry me anyway? She pulled him up and kissed him. Yes. God, yes. Forever, remember? Forever. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony with 20 people. Fiona's parents, who thought she was crazy for marrying before graduation. Nathan's mom, who cried through the entire thing. A handful of friends who believed in their crazy dream of building something from nothing. Fiona wore a simple white dress from a consignment shop. Nathan wore his only suit. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to build their lives with the same passion they were building their company. And they did. They graduated and immediately threw themselves into the startup. Worked out of Nathan's one-bedroom apartment with maxed-out credit cards and unshakable faith. Fiona handled the business side, operations, finding investors, managing the money. Nathan handled innovation, product development, the technical magic that made their software revolutionary. When investors said no, Fiona found new ones. When money got so tight they were eating ramen for every meal, she picked up freelance consulting work. When Nathan wanted to quit after their first major setback, she held his face in her hands and reminded him, "We're changing the world. Remember?" The company took off like wildfire. Within 2 years, they had their first major contract. Within 3, they were hiring employees. Within 5, they were being featured in tech magazines as the couple who disrupted the industry. Fiona got pregnant during their second major funding round. She was in a meeting with potential investors, pitching their expansion strategy, when she suddenly had to excuse herself to throw up in the bathroom. She took a test that night. 2 pink lines. Nathan cried when she told him. Happy tears, holding her close, talking to her still flat stomach about all the things he was going to teach their baby. Pascal was born on a Tuesday morning after 22 hours of labor. Nathan held Fiona's hand through every contraction, never leaving her side. And when they placed their son in Fiona's arms, tiny and perfect in theirs, she looked at Nathan and thought this was it. This was everything. 2 years later, Ruby arrived. A planned pregnancy this time, timed perfectly between product launches. Another perfect baby. Another piece of their beautiful life clicking into place. Their tiny apartment became a penthouse in the city. Their team of 5 became 200. Their scrappy startup became a tech empire worth hundreds of millions. Magazine covers called them a power couple. The couple who built dreams. Untouchable. Joan was there through all of it. Fiona's best friend since high school. Always around. Always part of the inner circle. She'd been maid of honor at the wedding. Godmother to Pascal. The cool aunt who brought expensive presents and told inappropriate jokes that made the kids giggle. Joan had been married twice. Both ended in divorce. She always had a new boyfriend, a new drama, a new reason why relationships were impossible. She'd show up at Fiona's house with wine and stories about her latest romantic disaster, and Fiona would listen and offer advice and think how lucky she was to have Nathan. Must be nice, Joan would say sometimes, watching Nathan and Fiona cook dinner together while the kids played. Having someone so devoted. You'll find it, Fiona always assured her. The right person is out there. Joan would smile. Of course. I'm sure you're right. Looking back, Fiona should have seen it. The way Joan's eyes followed Nathan. The way she volunteered to help with business strategy, creating reasons to spend time at the office. The small comments about how Fiona just signed things without reading them, said with a laugh but edged with something else. I could never just trust like that, Joan said once, watching Fiona sign a stack of documents Nathan had brought home. It's not about trust, Fiona had replied. It's about being a team. Nathan handles the complex financial stuff. I handle operations. We each play to our strengths. Joan had nodded. Still, I'd want to know what I was signing. Why? Fiona had laughed. So I can spend hours reading legal jargon I won't understand anyway? Nathan's got this. He'd never let anything happen to me. To us? Of course not, Joan had said. Of course not. Fiona signed the documents without reading them, just like she always did. Because they were a team. Because she trusted him. Because in 7 years of marriage, Nathan had never given her a single reason to doubt. That trust would be her destruction. It was a Thursday afternoon when Fiona realized she'd missed her period. She'd been exhausted for weeks, emotional, her body feeling off in that familiar way. She stopped at a pharmacy on the way home from a business lunch and bought a test. In the master bathroom of their penthouse, she watched 2 pink lines appear. Baby number 3. Joy flooded through her, warm and overwhelming and perfect. She pressed a hand to her stomach, smiling through sudden tears. Nathan would be thrilled. The kids would be excited. They'd always talked about a big family. She checked her phone. Nathan had texted an hour ago. Home early today. See you at 4. Perfect. She'd make his favorite dinner. Tell the kids after dessert. Make it a special family moment. Fiona tucked the pregnancy test into her pocket and headed downstairs, her heart so full it ached. She was setting the table when she heard a car in the driveway. She glanced at the clock. 3:47. Even earlier than he'd said. She smoothed her dress, touched her hair, practiced her smile in the reflection of the china cabinet. Guess what? She'd say, we're gonna need a bigger car. The front door didn't open. It exploded. Federal agents poured into her home like a flood, guns drawn, voices shouting commands that didn't make sense. Fiona Jones. Hands where we can see them. She stumbled backward, hands flying up instinctively, her mind trying to process what was happening. What? Down on the ground. Now, there's been a mistake, Fiona said, her voice too high, too breathless. I don't get down. Upstairs, she heard Ruby scream. Everything in Fiona's body screamed to run to her children, to protect them, to fix whatever was happening. She tried to move toward the stairs. Someone grabbed her, hands rough, forcing her down onto the marble floor of her own entryway. My kids, she gasped. Please, my kids are upstairs. Fiona Jones, you're under arrest for corporate fraud, embezzlement, insider trading, and money laundering. The words didn't make sense. Corporate fraud, money laundering. These were things that happened to other people, criminals, people on the news. Not her. Not in her home with her children screaming upstairs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Cold metal circled her wrists. Click, click. Pascal appeared at the top of the stairs, 7 years old and terrified. Mommy, baby, it's okay. Fiona called up to him, trying to keep her voice steady even as panic tore through her chest. Go back to your room. Everything's going to be okay. But she could see it wasn't okay. She could see Ruby behind Pascal, crying, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She could see agents moving through her house, their house, touching things, looking at things, treating their home like a crime scene. Someone called child services, An agent said into their radio. 2 minors on site. No. Fiona twisted against the cuffs, her calm shattering completely. Don't touch my children. Don't you dare touch my children. Nathan. Nathan. Where are you? And then she saw him, standing in the doorway, calm, phone pressed to his ear, watching. Their eyes met across the chaos of their destroyed life. And for 1 second, 1 horrible second, Fiona felt relief. Nathan was here. Nathan would fix this. Nathan would tell them there'd been a terrible mistake. Nathan. She breathed, trying to stand, the agents pulling her back. Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. He lowered his phone slowly. And his face was wrong. Cold, distant, empty. The man she'd loved for a decade was gone, replaced by a stranger wearing his skin. I can't help you, Fiona, he said quietly. The evidence is clear. The world tilted. The floor disappeared beneath her feet even though she was kneeling on it. What? Daddy? Pascal's voice cracked from the stairs. What's happening? Nathan finally moved, but not toward her. Never toward her. He walked past her like she was a stranger, climbed the stairs, gathered their children into his arms. Come here, guys. Come to Daddy. Nathan. Fiona was screaming now, thrashing against the hands that held her. What are you doing? I didn't do anything. He didn't answer, just held Pascal and Ruby, his back to her, shutting her out. Ma'am, we need to go, an agent said, pulling her toward the door. The last thing Fiona saw as they forced her into the back of an unmarked car was Ruby's tear-streaked face pressed against the window, her mouth forming the word mommy over and over, and the pregnancy test, still in her pocket, digging into her hip like an accusation. The holding cell smelled like urine and despair. Fiona sat on a metal bench, still in shock, her mind unable to process the last 3 hours. The arrest, the fingerprinting, the photographs, the orange jumpsuit they'd made her change into. The reality that this wasn't a mistake that would be quickly corrected. A public defender showed up 6 hours later. He looked exhausted before he even sat down, carrying an overstuffed briefcase and the air of someone who'd already given up. Mrs. Jones. He opened a folder without meeting her eyes. I've reviewed your case. I'll be honest with you. The evidence against you is damning. This is a mistake, Fiona said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Hollow. I didn't do anything. Your signatures are on every document. Bank transfers, falsified reports, insider trading communications. Everything points directly to you, because my husband told me to sign them. Fiona leaned forward, desperate to make him understand. Nathan handles all the complex financial stuff. He brings me documents, tells me they're standard contracts and reports, and I sign them. I trust him. I trusted him. The lawyer finally looked at her. His expression was pitying. That's not a legal defense, Mrs. Jones. Then what is? At this point, plea deal. If we can negotiate with the prosecutors, maybe we can get your sentence reduced to sentence? Fiona's voice rose. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not what a jury is going to see. He started packing up his folder. Think about the plea deal. For your children's sake. My children. Fiona's hands clenched. Where are my children? With your husband. He's been granted temporary full custody given the circumstances. The circumstances being that he framed me? The lawyer stood. I'll be in touch about the plea. He left. Fiona sat in the holding cell, alone, trying to understand how her life had been destroyed in a single afternoon. 2 days later, she saw Nathan on the news. The television in the common area of the county jail was showing the evening broadcast. Fiona almost walked past it. Then she heard his voice. She turned, and there he was, Nathan, her Nathan, sitting across from a sympathetic reporter, looking devastated. I never knew, he was saying, wiping at his eyes. The woman I married, the mother of my children. I trusted her completely. To find out she was capable of this level of deception. Mr. Jones, the reporter said gently, what do you say to people who wonder how you didn't know? Nathan shook his head. I ask myself that every day. How did I miss it? But Fiona was so good at separating our business life from our home life. I handled product development. She handled the financial operations. I trusted her. Do you believe she acted alone? I have to believe that. The alternative, that I was somehow complicit, is unthinkable. My lawyers are cooperating fully with the investigation. I have nothing to hide. What about your children? How are they handling this? Nathan's face crumpled in apparent anguish. They're devastated. They don't understand why their mother would do something like this. I'm doing my best to shield them, to help them process, but... He paused, composing himself. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. An inmate near Fiona whistled low. Damn, he's good. Fiona couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This was Nathan. Nathan who had promised to love her forever. Nathan who had cried when Pascal was born. Nathan who had held her through her father's funeral and whispered that they'd get through anything together. Nathan who was sitting on national television, painting her as a criminal mastermind while he played the role of devastated victim. The next interview was worse. Joan appeared on screen. Fiona's best friend since high school. Maid of honor at her wedding. Godmother to Pascal. I never wanted to believe it, Joan was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But looking back, there were signs. Fiona changed when the money started coming in. She became secretive, obsessed with the numbers in a way that seemed off. The reporter leaned in. You and Mrs. Jones were very close. This must be devastating for you. It is. Joan's voice broke convincingly. I keep thinking, what if I'd said something? What if I'd pushed harder when things seemed strange? Maybe I could have stopped this before it went so far. Before she destroyed so many lives. You blame yourself? Joan nodded. I introduced Fiona and Nathan. If I'd never brought them together, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Nathan and those children would have been spared this nightmare. Fiona watched her best friend lie on national television. Watched her cry crocodile tears. Watched her weave a narrative of Fiona as a villain and herself as a tragic bystander. The trial was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming. Fiona's signatures on every incriminating document. Her name on bank accounts holding millions in laundered money. Email communications that appeared to show her orchestrating the entire scheme. Her lawyer pushed for the plea deal. Just plead guilty to reduce charges. We can probably get you down to 5 years instead of 20. I didn't do it, Fiona insisted. It doesn't matter. You can't prove that. Take the deal. Think about your children. 5 years and you can see them again. Fight this and lose and they'll be adults before you get out. In the end, Fiona's lawyer convinced her. Not because she believed she was guilty, but because 5 years sounded survivable. Because she thought that in 5 years, she could come home to Pascal and Ruby. Because she still, despite everything, believed that truth would eventually surface. She pleaded guilty. Was sentenced to 8 years with possibility of parole in 5. The day of her sentencing, Nathan released a statement. Today brings some measure of closure for our family. While I'm devastated by Fiona's choices, I'm grateful that justice has been served. My focus now is on healing and protecting our children from further harm. Fiona was transferred to Redwood Women's Correctional Facility 3 days later. That's when she realized. Sitting in her cell on her first night, listening to the sounds of 200 women locked in concrete boxes. That's when she understood. Nathan wasn't going to visit, wasn't going to bring the kids, wasn't going to answer her letters or her calls. He'd erased her, and everyone believed he was the victim. 2 weeks into her sentence, Fiona realized with certainty what she'd suspected the day of her arrest. She was pregnant. The morning sickness started. The exhaustion that went beyond the depression of incarceration. Her body changing in ways she recognized from her 2 previous pregnancies. She requested a pregnancy test. Came back positive. She was carrying Nathan's child. In prison. Convicted of crimes she didn't commit. Abandoned by everyone she'd ever trusted. The irony was so cruel it almost made her laugh. She wrote to Nathan. Told him about the baby. Begged him to visit. To at least talk to her. To explain why. The letter came back unopened. Returned to sender. She tried calling. He'd blocked her number. She wrote to Pascal and Ruby. Simple letters telling them she loved them, that she was thinking of them, that mommy was going to come home. Those letters came back too. Unopened. Refused. Nathan had convinced their children that she was a criminal, that she'd chosen money over them, that she deserved to be locked away. And they believed him. Meanwhile, the outside world moved forward without her. Nathan played his role perfectly, the heartbroken husband trying to rebuild. He did interviews about betrayal and healing, spoke at conferences about trust and leadership, positioned himself as a survivor of his wife's crimes. The company thrived. With Fiona gone and Nathan painting himself as the sole visionary, investors poured in money. The stock price tripled. Nathan became not just successful but a symbol, the man who overcame personal devastation to build an empire. All while Fiona grew their third child in a 6x8 cell. Pregnancy in prison is its own special kind of hell. Morning sickness with one toilet shared by 3 women. No prenatal vitamins for the first 6 weeks because the paperwork got lost. Eating prison food that made her gag but knowing she had to keep something down for the baby. Other inmates were cruel in the casual way that people are when they're all suffering. Heard your man already moved on. Rich girl thought she'd never fall. How's it feel, princess? Fiona stopped responding. Stopped engaging. She went to her job in the prison laundry. She ate her meals. She attended her mandated counseling sessions. And she grew a baby that would be taken from her the moment it was born. That knowledge sat in her chest like a stone. She had maybe 7 more months with this child. 7 months of feeling it move inside her. And then it would be gone. Given to Nathan. Raised by the man who'd destroyed her. She tried to protect her heart from it. Tried not to bond. But how do you not love something that's part of you? How do you not talk to the flutter of movement in your belly? Not promise things you can't deliver. I'm sorry, she would whisper late at night, hands on her growing stomach. I'm so sorry you're here. I'm sorry I can't give you better. But I love you. Whatever happens, know that I loved you. The pregnancy progressed. 6 months. 7. 8. Fiona's belly grew. Her ankles swelled. Her back ached from the thin prison mattress. Other inmates started being nicer, in that strange way women have of circling around pregnant women even in the worst circumstances. You picked a name? One asked. Bella, Fiona said. If it's a girl. Pretty name. What if it's a boy? Then I don't know. That was Nathan's job. Picking boy names. The woman patted her shoulder. Sorry, honey. She went into labor on a Tuesday night at 2:17 in the morning. The first contraction woke her from restless sleep, pain radiating through her lower back and abdomen. She lay there for a moment, disoriented, trying to remember where she was. Prison. She was in prison. The second contraction hit 3 minutes later. She pressed the call button for the guards. Waited. Pressed it again. A guard appeared 15 minutes later. What? I'm in labor, Fiona gasped. You sure? Another contraction tore through her. She couldn't speak, could only nod. The guard radioed for medical. They made her walk to the infirmary, waddling through empty hallways while contractions hit every few minutes. The prison medical ward was a joke. 4 beds separated by curtains. A nurse who looked barely old enough to have graduated high school. Basic equipment and the air of a place designed for minimal care. How far apart are the contractions? The nurse asked. 3 minutes, Fiona managed. Okay. Looks like you're having a baby tonight. No family. No support. No hand to hold. Just Fiona and a bored nurse and pain that rewrote her understanding of suffering. Labor lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of agony in a prison medical ward while guards changed shifts outside and the sun came up on a world that had forgotten her. At 8:42 in the morning, Fiona delivered a baby girl. They placed her on Fiona's chest, tiny and wailing and perfect. Fiona sobbed. Great heaving sobs that shook her whole body as she held her daughter. Hi baby girl, she whispered. Hi Bella. I'm your mama. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Bella had Nathan's nose. Fiona's eyes. A dusting of dark hair. 10 perfect fingers. 10 perfect toes. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure innocence born into the worst possible circumstances. Fiona didn't sleep. She couldn't. She had 24 hours with her daughter. Maybe less. She wasn't going to waste a second. She held Bella, memorized her face, counted her breaths, whispered promises she didn't know if she could keep. I'm going to fix this, she told her daughter. I don't know how, but I will. And when you're old enough to understand, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to make sure you know that I loved you, that I never wanted to leave you. Bella slept against her chest. Fiona traced the curve of her tiny ear, the softness of her cheek. The sun set, rose again. 24 hours passed in both an instant and an eternity. Morning came. The guard appeared in the doorway. Time's up. Father's here to pick her up. Fiona's arms tightened instinctively around Bella. Please, just one more hour. Can't do that. Please. She's my baby. Please. Ma'am, don't make this harder than it has to be. He's here? Fiona's voice cracked with desperate hope. Nathan's here? Can I see him? I need to see him. I need to talk to him. The guard's face shifted slightly. Something that might have been pity. He declined. The words didn't make sense. Declined. Nathan was in this building, coming to take their daughter, and he'd refused to see her. Please, Fiona whispered. Please just let me see him for 1 minute. I just need. The guard moved forward, reached for Bella. No. Fiona tried to twist away, to protect her baby, but there was nowhere to go. The guard lifted Bella from her arms. Please, please, she's my baby. Please don't take her. Bella started crying, reaching for Fiona with tiny starfish hands. Mommy's here. Mommy loves you. Fiona was screaming now, trying to get out of the bed, trying to reach her daughter. Bella. The guard carried Bella out of the room. Her cries echoed down the hallway, getting fainter and fainter until they disappeared entirely. Fiona collapsed back onto the bed, her body empty, her arms empty. Her heart shattered into pieces so small they could never be put back together. They had to sedate her. She was screaming, thrashing, incoherent with grief. A nurse came with a needle. Fiona felt the prick, then nothing. When she woke up hours later, her breasts were engorged with milk for a baby who was gone. Her body ached. Her soul was destroyed. Nathan had been in the building, had taken their daughter, had refused to even look at her. That's when Fiona understood. Really understood. She wasn't a person to him anymore. She was an inconvenience he'd successfully removed from his life. The weeks that followed were a blur. Fiona pumped breast milk because her body demanded it, then poured it down the drain because there was nowhere to send it. Each time was a fresh reminder. You had a baby. She's gone. She doesn't need you. She wrote letters to Nathan, begging, pleading, demanding, asking about Bella, asking to see pictures, asking for any crumb of information about her daughter. Every letter came back unopened. She tried calling when she finally got phone privileges. He'd blocked her number. She wrote to Pascal and Ruby, told them about their baby sister, told them Mommy loved them and thought about them every day. Those letters came back too. Depression set in like fog. Heavy, suffocating, inescapable. Fiona stopped eating, stopped showering unless forced, stopped engaging with anyone. She was a ghost haunting her own life. 6 months passed like this. 6 months of going through motions, of surviving but not living. Other inmates tried to reach her. Even the guards looked concerned. But Fiona was unreachable, locked inside a prison of her own grief. Then one day she got a visitor. Fiona almost didn't go. Visits meant hope, and hope was more painful than despair. But the guard was insistent. Someone's here for you. Get moving. She shuffled to the visiting room, expecting. What? She didn't know. Not Nathan. Never Nathan. Through the glass partition sat Lydia, her assistant from the company. 24 years old, fresh-faced, looking terrified and determined in equal measure. Fiona picked up the phone slowly. Lydia, what are you doing here? Lydia's eyes were fierce behind her glasses. Because I don't believe you did it. Fiona's laugh was hollow. Doesn't matter what you believe. The court decided. The world decided. It matters to me. Lydia leaned forward. Mrs. Jones. Fiona, I worked for you for 3 years. I saw how you ran operations. You're meticulous, detail-oriented. You would never make the kind of sloppy mistakes that were in those documents. The documents I apparently signed without reading, Fiona said bitterly. Exactly. Lydia pulled out a notebook. That's what didn't make sense to me. So I started looking, really looking, at everything. Fiona felt something stir in her chest. Something that might have been hope, if she'd still been capable of feeling it. What did you find? Anomalies. Transactions that happened on days you were provably somewhere else. Signature patterns that don't quite match. Communication timestamps that don't align with your schedule. That doesn't prove anything. Maybe not yet. But Lydia's smile was small but real. I'm still looking. And I'm going to find the proof. I'm going to help you. Why? Fiona's voice broke. Why would you risk your job, your career? For me. Because you gave me a chance when no one else would. You hired me straight out of college when I had no experience. You mentored me, believed in me, and because Lydia's eyes glistened. Because what they're doing to you is wrong. And I can't just stand by and watch. For the first time in 6 months, Fiona cried something other than tears of despair. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we get you out of here. Lydia visited every week after that. Brought updates on her investigation. Small comforts. News from the outside world that Fiona both craved and dreaded. It was Lydia who told her 2 months after that first visit. Mrs. Jones. Fiona, I need to tell you something, and it's going to hurt. Fiona steeled herself. What? It's about Mr. Jones. And Joan. A cold feeling settled in Fiona's stomach. What about them? Lydia pulled out her phone, showed Fiona a photograph through the glass. Nathan and Joan. At a restaurant. Holding hands across the table. They're dating, Lydia said quietly. It's been in the tabloids for a few weeks now. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I thought you deserved to know. Fiona stared at the photograph. Nathan, her husband, looking at Joan the way he used to look at her. Joan, her best friend, wearing an expression that was far too comfortable. How long? Fiona's voice was numb. The public relationship? About a month. But Lydia hesitated. I found some things. Hotel receipts. Travel records. From before your arrest. I think they've been involved for a lot longer than they're admitting. Of course they have, Fiona said. Because why stop at one betrayal when you can have them all? I'm sorry. Don't be. Fiona set down the phone. Just keep digging. If they were together before, that might be evidence. I will. Promise. But 2 months later, Lydia had to deliver news that was so much worse. Fiona was in the common room. The television was on, showing some reality show that most of the inmates were half watching. Fiona wasn't paying attention. She'd learned to tune out the TV. It only showed a world she was no longer part of. Then someone changed the channel. Breaking news, the announcer said. Billionaire Nathan Jones finds love again after heartbreak. Fiona's head snapped up. There he was. Nathan. And Joan. At an upscale restaurant, paparazzi cameras flashing. The headline scrolling across the bottom read. Tech mogul moving on after wife's betrayal. An inmate near Fiona turned. Ain't that your husband? Fiona couldn't answer. Could only watch as Nathan and Joan smiled for the cameras. Holding hands. Looking like a couple in love. The segment ended. The show returned to normal programming. But the damage was done. Everyone in the common room now knew. Fiona's husband had moved on. The comments started immediately. That's cold. He didn't waste no time, did he? And with her friend? Damn. Fiona stood up, walked calmly back to her cell, and lay down on her bunk. She didn't cry. She was beyond crying. She just stared at the ceiling and felt the last piece of her heart turn to stone. But the worst was still coming. 2 months after that, Fiona was back in the common room. She'd learned to avoid it when the television was on, but she'd been assigned to cleaning duty. She had to be there. Someone had the TV on the news. Fiona was mopping, trying to ignore it. Then someone turned up the volume. Yo, check it out. Billionaire wedding. Fiona's hands stilled on the mop handle. Live coverage from the wedding of Nathan Jones and Joan Clark. The announcer said, voice bright with manufactured enthusiasm. Fiona looked up. The screen showed a wedding. White flowers, string lights, an altar set up in some expensive venue she didn't recognize. And there was Joan, in a white wedding gown, looking radiant. The camera panned to Nathan in a tuxedo, looking nervous and happy, and exactly like he'd looked on their wedding day. After the devastating betrayal by his first wife, the announcer continued, Nathan Jones has found love again with longtime friend Joan Clark, who supported him through his darkest days. The ceremony began. Fiona watched, frozen, as Nathan and Joan exchanged vows. Joan's voice carried through the speakers. I promise to stand by you, to support you, to love you through everything life brings. Nathan, tears in his eyes. You showed me I could trust again. I love you. They kissed. The small crowd applauded. Then the camera zoomed in on Joan's hand as she waved to someone off screen. On her finger, catching the light of 1,000 camera flashes, was Fiona's ring. The emerald ring Nathan had designed. The ring he'd proposed with on that rooftop at sunrise. The ring that was supposed to be Fiona's forever. Joan was wearing it. An inmate whistled. That's your ring? Another turned to Fiona. Girl, you okay? Fiona couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. She was watching her best friend marry her husband while wearing her ring while she stood in a prison common room holding a mop, convicted of crimes she didn't commit. The news cut to interviews. Nathan, glowing. Joan showed me that it's possible to trust again. After everything Fiona put me through, put our children through, I didn't think I could ever open my heart. But Joan was there. She never gave up on me. Joan, dabbing at her eyes. I just wanted to help a friend. I never imagined we'd fall in love. But sometimes the most beautiful things come from the darkest moments. Turn it off, Fiona said quietly. No one moved. Everyone was watching her now, waiting for the breakdown. I said turn it off. The television kept playing. Joan's voice filled the room. It's a new beginning for all of us. For Nathan, for the children, for our family. Our family. Joan said our family. Something inside Fiona snapped. I said turn it off. She threw the mop. It hit the television but didn't break it. She lunged forward. Hands grabbed her, pulled her back. She was screaming. Words she didn't remember later. Rage and grief pouring out in one primal hell. She fought the guards. Fought with strength she didn't know she had. They forced her to the ground. Cuffed her. Dragged her toward solitary confinement. That's my ring, she screamed. That's my life. That's my husband. My children. But no one cared. No one could help her. They threw her into solitary. A windowless cell. Complete darkness except for a sliver of light under the door. Fiona screamed until her throat was raw. Cried until there were no tears left. Beat her fists against the concrete walls until they were bruised and bleeding. And then, silence. She sat in the darkness. Empty. Destroyed. Every piece of her former life taken and given to someone else. Her husband. Her children. Her ring. Her identity. All of it gone. That night, sitting in absolute darkness, Fiona stopped being the woman who'd been destroyed, and became something else entirely. They want me to disappear? She thought, her mind suddenly eerily calm. They want me erased from existence? Fine. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they've won. Let them build their perfect life on the ashes of mine. Because when I get out of here, when I find the proof I know exists, when I claw my way back from this grave they buried me in, I'm gonna take everything from them. Every single thing they stole from me. Nathan wanted her destroyed? She'd show him what destroyed really looked like. Joan wanted her life? Fiona would make sure she lost everything. They'd made one critical mistake. They'd left her alive. Broken, yes. Buried, yes. But alive. And a woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous thing in the world. Fiona sat in the darkness of solitary confinement and began to plan. They let Fiona out of solitary after 72 hours. She walked back to her cell quietly, calmly, a different woman than the one who'd been dragged away screaming. The other inmates watched her warily. You good? One asked. Fiona nodded. I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. She was focused. There's a difference. Lydia visited the following week. She looked nervous, like she expected Fiona to still be broken. I heard what happened, Lydia said quietly through the phone. With the wedding. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you. It's done. Fiona's voice was steady. Tell me what you found. Lydia blinked, surprised by the shift. I've been digging through old company files. There are discrepancies in the accounts. Transactions that happened on days when you were verifiably somewhere else. I have your calendar, your emails, even security footage from the office. You couldn't have made these transfers. Good. What else? Some of the signatures look off. I'm not a handwriting expert, but I took copies to someone who is. Off the record. They said there are inconsistencies that suggest possible forgery. Fiona leaned forward. Did you find anything connecting Nathan and Joan before my arrest? Not yet, but I'm looking. Lydia hesitated. Mrs. Jones, I need to tell you something. I've contacted lawyers. A lot of lawyers. 47 to be exact. And no one will take your case. They all say the evidence against you is too strong, that you already pleaded guilty, that there's no path forward. Fiona felt the disappointment but didn't let it show. Then we keep looking. There's one more. His name is Lance Davis. He's young, kind of new to this level of case, but he has a reputation for taking impossible odds. Call him. I already did. He said he'll come see you next week. Lydia kept her promise. The following Tuesday, a guard came to Fiona's cell. You got a visitor. Legal. Fiona followed the guard to the visitor room, expecting another overworked public defender ready to tell her there was nothing that could be done. Instead, she found a man who looked like he'd just rolled out of bed and into a courtroom. Lance Davis was in his early 30s, wearing a suit that was slightly rumpled and a tie that wasn't quite straight. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and an overstuffed briefcase that was threatening to spill papers everywhere. He sat down across from her, dropping the briefcase with a thud. Mrs. Jones. I'm Lance Davis. Fiona picked up the phone. Mr. Davis. He fumbled with his own phone, nearly dropped it, caught it, and gave her an apologetic smile. Sorry. Long morning. Despite everything, Fiona almost smiled. It's fine. Lance pulled out a file folder, opened it, and looked at her directly. I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Jones. Your case is a disaster. The evidence against you is damning. You already pleaded guilty. 47 lawyers before me said it was hopeless. Fiona's brief moment of hope started to fade. Then why are you here? Because I read your file and nothing adds up. Lance leaned forward. You're meticulous, detail-oriented. Your work history shows someone who triple-checks everything. But these documents that supposedly prove your guilt, they're sloppy, full of mistakes someone with your background would never make. Maybe I got greedy. Maybe I got careless. You were pregnant when you were arrested. You just signed a document 3 days before that locked in your company's biggest expansion. Why would you risk everything right then? It doesn't make sense. Fiona studied him. Every other lawyer has asked me to prove I'm innocent. You're trying to prove I couldn't be guilty. Why? Lance's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing his face. Because I know what it's like when the person you trust most destroys you. What do you mean? My wife walked out on me and our daughter 3 years ago. Helena was 3 years old. My wife just left, didn't leave a note, didn't call, didn't check on our daughter for birthdays or holidays or anything. She erased us from her life. I'm sorry, Fiona said quietly. Everyone told me to just accept it and move on. That some people are like that. But I couldn't understand it. How do you spend 3 years building a family and then walk away like it meant nothing? Lance shook his head. So I kept digging, kept looking for answers. And I found out she'd been planning it for 6 months. Had a new life already set up. A new identity. She'd systematically erased every trace of herself from our world. Why are you telling me this? Because when I read your file, I saw the same pattern. Someone systematically setting up a scapegoat. Someone planning an exit strategy while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. And I thought, what if you're not the villain here? What if you're the one who got erased? Fiona felt tears prick her eyes for the first time since solitary. No one has said that to me. Everyone just assumes. I'm not everyone. Lance opened his briefcase. And I don't take cases I don't believe in. So here's what I'm proposing. Let me investigate. Really investigate. Your assistant Lydia has already given me some leads. Let me follow them. And if I find what I think I'm going to find, we reopen this case. And if you don't find anything, then at least you'll know someone tried. Fiona looked at this rumpled, earnest lawyer who believed her when no one else would. Why would you do this? I can't pay you. Everything I had is gone. I'm not doing it for money. Lance met her eyes. I'm doing it because everyone deserves someone who believes them. And because if I'm right, an innocent woman is in prison while the people who destroyed her are living her life. That's not justice. Okay, Fiona said. Okay, help me. Lance smiled, transformed his entire face. Then let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, Lance visited regularly. At first, it was strictly professional. Files and questions and timelines. He'd sit across from her with papers spread out, asking about specific dates and transactions and signatures. Walk me through your typical day, he'd say. When did Nathan bring you documents to sign? Usually at night, after the kids were in bed. He'd bring home a stack of papers, tell me they were standard contracts or reports, and I'd sign them. Did you ever read them? Sometimes I'd skim. But Fiona shook her head. It was technical financial language, legal jargon, and I trusted him. He was my husband. Why would I think he was setting me up? Lance made notes. Did anyone else ever see you sign these documents? Not usually. It was late. The kids were asleep. It was just us. Convenient, Lance muttered. No witnesses to the fact that you had no idea what you were actually signing. The visits started to shift. Lance would still bring files and questions, but he'd also bring other things. One day, he set down a coffee cup along with his briefcase. Fiona looked at it, confused. What's this? Coffee. 2 sugars, right? That's what Lydia said. Fiona stared at the cup. You remembered my coffee order? Lance shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. Seemed like the least I could do. Prison coffee is terrible. She picked up the cup, and for the first time in a year, tasted coffee that didn't come from an industrial dispenser. It was from the outside world. Tasted like hope. Thank you, she whispered. The next week, Lance brought chocolate. Just a small bar smuggled in against probably a dozen regulations. Don't tell anyone, he said, sliding it across the table. But I figured you could use something sweet. You're going to get in trouble. Only if you rat me out. And something tells me you're good at keeping secrets. Fiona smiled. An actual smile. Her first in longer than she could remember. Then one day, Lance brought something that made her cry. He pulled a piece of paper from his briefcase. My daughter Helena. She's 6 now. She heard I'm helping someone who misses her kids. She wanted you to have this. It was a child's drawing. Stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. One figure was labeled Daddy. One was labeled Helena. And one, in careful first-grade handwriting, was labeled The Nice Lady Daddy is Helping. She drew me? Fiona's voice cracked. She wanted you to know someone's thinking about you. Fiona held the drawing like it was made of glass. Tell her thank you. Tell her it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I will. Lance watched her trace the crayon lines with gentle fingers. She's a good kid. Smart. Funny. She asked me the other day why her mom left. I still don't have a good answer. There isn't a good answer. Some people are just broken in ways that hurt everyone around them. Yeah. Lance was quiet for a moment. She asks about you sometimes. The lady I'm helping wants to know if you're okay. I don't know how to answer that. I tell her you're strong, that you're fighting, that good people sometimes have bad things happen to them, but that doesn't make them stop being good. Do you believe that? About you? Lance met her eyes. Yeah, I do. Something passed between them in that moment. Connection. An understanding. 2 people broken by betrayal, recognizing each other's scars and finding something like comfort in the shared damage. From then on, the visits became something Fiona looked forward to. Not just because Lance was helping her case, but because he made her feel human again. Made her feel seen. He'd tell her stories about Helena, the school play where she forgot her lines and just made up a song instead. The elaborate braids she wanted that he couldn't figure out how to do. The questions she asked that he had no idea how to answer. Fiona would tell him about Pascal and Ruby, the memories she was terrified of forgetting. Ruby's laugh, Pascal's protectiveness, the way they both used to climb into her bed on Sunday mornings. And Bella, Lance said softly one day, "Do you know anything about her?" "No." Fiona's voice went hollow. "Nathan won't respond to any letters. I don't know if she's healthy, if she's happy, if she even knows I exist. We're going to fix that." Lance's hand pressed against the glass between them. "I promise you, Fiona, we're going to get you out of here, and you're going to know your daughter. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I don't." Meanwhile, Lydia was working the outside angle. She'd come visit every couple of weeks with updates. "I found something," she said one day, her eyes bright with excitement. "Nathan made a series of calls to a burner phone number in the months before your arrest. Calls that aren't in any official record. Do you know whose phone it was?" "Not yet, but I'm tracing it." 2 weeks later, she had an answer. The burner phone was registered to an address, an apartment complex across town. "I did some digging. Joan Clark had an apartment there. Officially, she was living in her condo downtown, but she was paying rent on this second apartment. Why would she need 2 places?" Lydia's expression was grim. "I think it's where she and Nathan met. I found hotel receipts too, going back 2 years before your arrest. They've been having an affair for a long time, Mrs. Jones." Fiona processed this information with the cold clarity she'd developed. So they weren't just opportunistic. They planned this. "It looks like it." Lance took this information and ran with it. He pulled phone records, financial statements, travel logs, started building a timeline. "Look at this," he said during one visit, spreading papers across the table between them. Nathan and Joan were both out of town on the same dates multiple times. Always separate hotel rooms, but always the same city. Always billed as business trips. How far back does it go? At least 2 years before your arrest. Maybe longer. They'd been planning this for years. It looks that way. Fiona felt cold fury settle in her chest. What else? Lance pulled out another document. The fraud itself. The timeline doesn't match your schedule. These transfers happened while you were provably somewhere else. At Pascal's school play. At a doctor's appointment. At a business lunch with witnesses. So someone else made the transfers. And forged your authorization. Lance pointed to signature comparisons. Look at these. Your real signatures versus the ones on the fraudulent documents. They're close, but not perfect. A forensic handwriting analyst could testify to that. Then get one. I already have. She's willing to testify that at least 15 of the signatures on key documents show signs of forgery. Fiona felt something that might have been hope. Is it enough? Not yet. But we're getting there. The breakthrough came 4 months into Lance's investigation. He showed up for their regular visit looking exhausted but triumphant. I found it. Found what? The smoking gun. Lance pulled out a flash drive. I have a contact in digital forensics. Called in a favor. He recovered deleted files from the company server. Files that were scrubbed but not thoroughly enough. What kind of files? Recorded phone calls. Between Nathan and Joan. From 6 months before your arrest. Fiona's hands started shaking. What do they say? Lance plugged the flash drive into a secure laptop the prison provided for legal proceedings. Let me play it for you. He pressed play. Joan's voice came through the speakers, clear and cold. She trusts you completely. She'll sign anything you put in front of her. Nathan's voice responded. That's what makes this so easy. She never questions me. What if she starts to? She won't. Fiona sees what she wants to see. The devoted husband. The perfect partnership. She's so busy playing happy family that she doesn't notice what's actually happening. And when the feds come looking, all roads lead to her. Joan sounded pleased. Her signatures. Her authorization. Her access. We've made sure of it. What about the kids? They'll understand eventually. Nathan's voice was matter of fact. We'll explain that their mother made bad choices, that she got greedy. They'll believe it because they'll want to. And us? Nathan's voice softened. We'll finally be together, like we always planned. No more hiding, no more sneaking around. Just us and the empire we built. The empire you built, Joan corrected. With me, not her. She was just the useful idiot who signed the papers. They both laughed. The recording ended. Fiona sat in silence, staring at the laptop. She'd known. Intellectually, she'd known they'd betrayed her. But hearing it, hearing them laugh about it, hearing Nathan call her a useful idiot while planning to turn their children against her, it was worse than she'd imagined. Are you okay? Lance asked gently. Fiona looked up. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was steady. Play it again. Fiona, play it again. I need to hear it. Lance played it 3 more times. Each time, Fiona's expression got colder, harder, more resolved. We have them, Lance said. This recording, combined with everything else we found, is enough to reopen your case. Then do it. There's something else. Lance pulled out another file. I found evidence that your arrest stopped the federal investigation. Once you were convicted, the case was closed. Nathan and Joan got away with millions because you took the fall. So this was never about destroying me. Fiona's voice was ice. It was about covering their tracks. You were the perfect scapegoat. Trusted. Access to everything. Willing to sign documents without reading them. They used your love against you. How soon can we file for a retrial? I'm drafting the motion now. With this evidence, I think we have a real shot at early release pending investigation. How early? You've served 3 years. With the new evidence and a cooperative prosecutor, maybe a few months until the hearing. Fiona nodded. Then let's destroy them. Lance looked at her, and for a moment he seemed worried. Fiona, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But don't lose yourself in revenge. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. I'm not losing myself. Fiona met his eyes. I'm finding myself. The version that knows that trust without verification is just stupidity. The version that knows love doesn't mean blind faith. The version that will never, ever let someone take everything from her again. Okay. But remember, the goal is justice, not destruction. Fiona smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. What's the difference? Listen, I need to pause here for a second because this story is getting intense and I need you with me. If you're feeling what Fiona's feeling right now, if you understand that moment when grief turns to determination, hit that subscribe button. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to become a different version of yourself to survive? Drop it in the comments. And if you're still with me, if you're ready to see Fiona rise from these ashes, just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because we're about to get to the good part. The part where the underdog stops running and starts fighting back. Lance filed the motion for retrial. It took 6 weeks to get a hearing date. In that time, Fiona prepared. She reviewed every piece of evidence Lance had gathered, memorized the timeline, practiced staying calm when she wanted to rage. Lance visited 3 times a week now, sometimes with case updates, sometimes just to talk. Helena asks about you, he said one day. Fiona smiled. How is she? Good. Bossy. She tried to rearrange my entire office last week because she said it wasn't organized right. Was she right? Completely. Lance laughed. She's 6 and already smarter than me. You're doing a good job with her. Raising a kid alone isn't easy. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. Lance's expression turned serious. But then she'll do something like bring me the drawing she made for you, or tell me she's proud of me for helping people, and I think maybe I'm not completely screwing it up. You're not. How do you know? Because she thinks about other people. She wanted to make me feel better even though she's never met me. That comes from you. From how you're raising her. Lance was quiet for a moment. Thank you. I needed to hear that. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Lance said, Fiona, I need to ask you something. What are you going to do when you get out? Get my kids back. And then? I don't know. Fiona traced patterns on the table between them. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. Getting out, clearing my name, seeing my children. That's as far as my brain can go. You've lost 3 years. Nathan and Joan took your life, your company, your identity. When you get it back, what do you want it to look like? I don't want the empire. I don't want the magazine covers or the power couple image. I just want. Fiona's voice cracked slightly. I want to tuck my kids into bed. I want to know my daughter. I want a life that's real instead of performed. You'll have that. Lance's hand pressed against the glass. I promise you'll have that. Don't make promises you can't keep. I told you. I don't. Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them that neither acknowledged but both felt. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Lance showed up an hour early to prep Fiona. The judge is fair but strict, he said. We present the evidence. The prosecution will argue that new evidence doesn't invalidate your guilty plea. We counter that the guilty plea was made under duress and without full knowledge of the setup. If the judge agrees, we get a retrial. If not, he didn't finish the sentence. If not, I stay here. We're not going to let that happen. The courtroom was small. Fiona was brought in wearing shackles and prison orange. She saw the judge, the prosecutors, a handful of observers. She didn't see Nathan. He'd been subpoenaed but sent his lawyers instead. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Lance presented the evidence methodically. The forged signatures, the timeline discrepancies, the phone records, the recovered audio of Nathan and Joan planning the frame-up. The prosecution argued that Fiona had pleaded guilty, that new evidence wasn't grounds for dismissal, that she was simply trying to escape the consequences of her actions. Lance countered brilliantly. Mrs. Jones pleaded guilty because she was told it was the only way to see her children again. She was pregnant, abandoned, and convinced by her own attorney that fighting was hopeless. She didn't plead guilty because she was guilty. She pleaded guilty because she was broken. The judge called a recess. Came back 2 hours later. I've reviewed the evidence, the judge said. The newly discovered recordings are compelling. The timeline discrepancies raise significant questions. While I cannot dismiss the original conviction based solely on this evidence, I am granting a motion for retrial. Furthermore, given the circumstances and the time already served, I am granting bail pending trial. The courtroom erupted. The prosecutors objected. Lance was on his feet, arguing for immediate release. The judge banged the gavel. Mrs. Jones, you will be released on bail with the following conditions. You will surrender your passport. You will wear a monitoring device. You will not leave the state. You will not contact Nathan Jones or Joan Clark. Do you understand? Fiona could barely speak. Yes, Your Honor. Bail is set at $500,000. Fiona's heart sank. She didn't have $500, let alone $500,000. Your Honor, Lance said quickly, my client has no access to funds. Everything she owned was seized or transferred. I request a reduction, I'll post bail. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the back of the courtroom. It took Fiona a moment to recognize her. Margaret Chun, an investor who'd believed in Fiona and Nathan from the beginning. Mrs. Chun, the judge said, you understand the amount? I do. And I understand that Fiona Jones was framed by people I once respected. I'll post the bail. 2 days later, Fiona walked out of Redwood Women's Correctional Facility. She'd been inside for 3 years. 3 years of concrete and fluorescent lights and other people screaming. She stepped outside and the sun hit her face. Real sunlight. Real air. Real world. Lance was waiting by his car. Next to him stood a little girl with dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses just like his. Helena. The little girl looked up at her with solemn eyes. Are you the nice lady? Fiona knelt down, not caring that she was crying. I am, and you must be Helena. Thank you for the beautiful drawing. Daddy says you're going to be okay now. I hope so, sweetheart. We're going to help. Helena reached out and took Fiona's hand. That's what we do. We help people. Fiona looked up at Lance. He was watching them with an expression that was soft and warm and full of something that made Fiona's breath catch. Let's get you out of here, he said. But there was a problem. Fiona had nowhere to go. Her assets were still frozen pending the investigation. She had no home, no money, nothing. Stay with us, Lance said as they drove away from the prison. I can't impose like that. You're not imposing. Helena and I have a spare room. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe and yours for as long as you need it. Lance, that's too much. Fiona. He glanced at her. You just spent 3 years in prison for crimes you didn't commit. You gave birth alone and had your baby taken from you. You've lost everything. Let me help. Please. She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some pride, some independence. But she was so tired, and she had nowhere else to go. Okay, she whispered. Okay, thank you. Lance's house was a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing like the penthouse Fiona used to live in, but it was warm and lived in and felt like a home. Helena gave Fiona a tour with serious importance. This is the living room where we watch movies. This is the kitchen where Daddy makes breakfast. This is my room. And this is the guest room that's going to be your room. It was small. A bed, a dresser, a window that looked out on the backyard. It was the most beautiful thing Fiona had seen in 3 years. Thank you, she said to Lance. There's one condition, he said. You have to join us for dinner. Helena insists. That night, Fiona sat at a kitchen table with Lance and Helena, eating spaghetti that Lance had slightly burned and salad that Helena had helped make. It was ordinary, simple, perfect. Helena chattered about school and her friends and the science project she was working on. Lance interjected with dad jokes that made Helena groan and Fiona laugh. For a few hours, Fiona almost forgot she was a woman on bail, awaiting retrial, estranged from her children. She almost felt human again. After Helena went to bed, Lance and Fiona sat in the living room, planning the next steps. We need to keep your release quiet, Lance said. No press. We don't want Nathan and Joan to know you're out until we're ready. Agreed. What about the retrial? It'll be months before it actually happens. In the meantime, we keep building the case. We find more evidence. We prepare to destroy their credibility. And I need to see my kids. Lance's expression turned sympathetic. Fiona, Nathan has full custody. Legally, you can't contact them. The bail conditions specifically prohibit it. So I'm free but still separated from my children. For now. But when we win the retrial, when your name is cleared, you'll get them back. Fiona nodded, but her heart ached. Pascal was 10 now. Ruby was 8. Bella was 2. Years she'd lost. Years she'd never get back. We should get you a new identity, Lance said. For going out in public. Just temporarily. If someone recognizes you, it'll be all over the news. So I'm in hiding. You're strategizing. There's a difference. They created a new identity for Fiona. Nora Mitchell. She dyed her hair darker, started wearing glasses, changed her style. To the outside world, she was just a woman staying with her friend and his daughter. Fiona got a remote job under her new name. Data entry. Boring and mindless, but it gave her something to do and a small income. But mostly she watched. She'd sit in her car outside her old house. The house where Nathan and Joan now lived with her children. She'd watch through binoculars as her kids played in the yard. Pascal was so tall now, almost as tall as Nathan. Ruby's hair was longer. And Bella was a toddler now, running and laughing and calling Joan Mama. It was torture. But Fiona couldn't stop. She needed to see them even from a distance. One Saturday, she followed them to a soccer game, sat in the bleachers on the opposite side, hidden behind sunglasses and a baseball cap. Ruby scored a goal. Fiona's heart swelled with pride. Ruby ran to the sidelines, and Joan scooped her up, spinning her around. Did you see, Mom? Did you see? I saw, baby. You were amazing. Fiona gripped the bleacher seat so hard her knuckles went white. That was supposed to be her. She was supposed to be the one cheering, celebrating, being called Mom. But she stayed hidden, stayed silent, because revealing herself now would ruin everything. One evening, Fiona was sitting in her car down the street from the house when she saw something that made her blood boil. Pascal was outside, sitting on the front steps, crying. Joan came out. Fiona rolled down her window slightly, straining to hear. I want to know about Mom, Pascal was saying. My real mom. Your real mom was a criminal, Joan said coldly. She chose money over you, over all of us. Why do you keep asking about her? Because she's still my mom. She doesn't deserve that title. I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one taking care of you. Stop living in the past. Pascal stood up, anger in his young voice. You're not my mom. You're the lady who married my dad. It's not the same. Joan grabbed his arm. Listen to me. Your mother is in prison where she belongs. She's never coming back. The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. She shoved him back toward the door. Get inside. Pascal went, but not before Fiona saw his face. Confused. Hurt. Grieving. Nathan was standing in the doorway. He'd watched the entire exchange and done nothing. Fiona sat in her car, shaking with rage. Joan was emotionally abusing her son, and Nathan was letting it happen. That's when Fiona knew. She couldn't just clear her name and move on. She had to destroy them. Completely. Publicly. Irreversibly. She drove back to Lance's house, her mind made up. I want to do more than win the retrial, she told Lance that night. I want to expose them. I want the world to know what they did. Fiona, be careful. Lance looked worried. Revenge can consume you. This isn't revenge. It's justice. Justice is you going free. Revenge is you destroying them. Then call it revenge. I don't care. Fiona's eyes were hard. They stole 3 years of my life. They turned my children against me. They're living in my house, raising my kids, wearing my ring. I want them to lose everything just like I did. Lance studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, let's make a plan. Over the next 18 months, Fiona became someone new. Not the trusting wife who signed documents without reading them. Not the broken prisoner who cried herself to sleep. She became calculated, strategic, patient. She and Lance worked tirelessly. He handled the legal angles, building an airtight case. She handled the intelligence gathering, learning everything about Nathan and Joan's lives. Lydia, still working at the company, fed them inside information. Nathan is planning a massive global expansion, she reported. He's throwing a gala to announce it. Investors, press, cameras everywhere. Perfect, Fiona said. That's where we'll do it. Do what? Destroy him. They planned meticulously. The evidence they'd present. The timing. The impact. And through it all, Fiona and Lance grew closer. It was inevitable, really. Two people spending that much time together, bonded by a shared mission, healing from similar wounds. There were moments, small moments, reaching for the same file, hands brushing, both freezing. Late nights reviewing evidence, sitting close on the couch, the air between them charged. One night, Lance pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You deserve to be happy again. I don't know what that means anymore, Fiona whispered. His hand lingered on her cheek. You will. When this is over. When you have your kids back and your name cleared. You'll remember. Lance. She put her hand over his. I can't. Not yet. Not until. I know. He pulled back gently. After. When you're free. Really free. After, she agreed. But the feelings were real. Unspoken but undeniable. Helena noticed. Kids always do. Daddy likes Nora, she announced one morning at breakfast. Lance choked on his coffee. Helena. He smiles different when she's around. Helena looked at Fiona seriously. Do you like him too? Fiona smiled. Your dad is a very good man. That's not an answer. You're too smart for 6. I'm almost 7. And you didn't answer. Fiona and Lance exchanged glances. There was something there. Something that could be beautiful if they let it. But not yet. First, Fiona had to reclaim her life. The day of Nathan's global expansion gala arrived. Fiona stood in front of the mirror in her room at Lance's house. She was wearing the emerald dress. The same dress she'd worn the night before her arrest. The night her life had been perfect and she'd been planning to tell Nathan about the baby. Fit differently now. She was thinner, harder, changed. Lance appeared in the doorway. Are you sure about this? Fiona met his eyes in the mirror. I've never been more sure of anything. Once you do this, there's no going back. Good. I don't want to go back. I want to burn it all down and build something new from the ashes. Lance walked up behind her. put his hands on her shoulders. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You know that? I'm the most destroyed person you've ever met. I just learned to weaponize it. That's what makes you strong. She turned to face him. Thank you. For everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. For... She didn't finish. Couldn't find the words. Lance cupped her face gently. After tonight, when this is done, we're gonna talk. Really talk. About what happens next. About us. Fiona smiled slightly. I like the sound of that. So do I. He leaned in, and for a moment, Fiona thought he was going to kiss her. Helena's voice called from downstairs. Daddy, is Nora ready? The car is here. The moment broke. Lance stepped back. Let's go make history. The gala was at the Grand Cascade Hotel. The most expensive venue in the city. Red carpet. Paparazzi. Everyone who was anyone in the tech world. Fiona arrived alone. Stepped out of the car. And immediately, everything stopped. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. Camera flashes exploded. Is that? Can't be. She's supposed to be in prison. Fiona walked through the crowd like she owned it. Head high. Shoulders back. Every inch the woman she used to be before Nathan destroyed her. Inside the ballroom, Nathan was on stage. Mid-speech about innovation and expansion and building the future. Then he saw her. The color drained from his face. His words died mid-sentence. The microphone slipped in his suddenly sweaty hands. Joan, sitting in the front row, turned to see what had stopped him. She saw Fiona. Went pale as death. The entire ballroom fell silent as Fiona walked down the center aisle. Security started to move toward her. Fiona held up a hand. Don't. You'll want to hear this. Something in her voice made them stop. Fiona walked up to the stage. Nathan stumbled backward. Someone handed her a microphone. Good evening, she said. Her voice was calm, clear, devastating. Some of you may remember me. Fiona Jones. The woman who supposedly destroyed this empire. Nathan found his voice. This is. You shouldn't be here. Security, don't. Fiona cut him off. You'll want to hear this, Nathan. So will your investors. She turned to face the crowd. 3 years ago, I was arrested for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. I pleaded guilty. I went to prison. I lost everything. My freedom. My children. My name. Someone in the crowd whispered. Why is she here? Fiona smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I spent 3 years asking myself why. Why would my husband, the father of my children, destroy me? And then I found the answer. Screens around the ballroom flickered to life. Documents appeared. Financial records. Timeline comparisons. Signature analyses. These are the real records, Fiona said. The fraud was real. But I didn't commit it. The documents scrolled, highlighting discrepancies. Transactions made while Fiona was provably elsewhere. Signatures that didn't quite match. Then Fiona played the recording. Joan's voice filled the ballroom. She trusts you completely. She'll sign anything you put in front of her. Nathan's voice. That's what makes this so easy. The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Investors pulling out phones. Fiona let it play. Let everyone hear Nathan and Joan planning her destruction. Laughing about it. Calling her a useful idiot. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Fiona turned to Nathan. He looked like a man watching his world end in real time. You had an affair with my best friend for 2 years before my arrest, Fiona said. You committed fraud and used my blind trust to frame me. My arrest stopped the federal investigation. Once I was convicted, the case closed. You walked away with millions. Built this expansion on blood money. And let me rot in prison. Nathan tried to speak. Fiona, I can explain. Explain what? Fiona's voice turned cold. Explain how you took our newborn daughter from my arms the day after I gave birth and refused to even see me? Explain how you turned our children against me? Explain how you married my best friend and gave her my ring? Joan stood up, trying to run. Federal agents appeared at the exits, blocking them. Oh, didn't I mention? Fiona smiled. The FBI has been listening to this whole conversation. They're very interested in reopening the investigation. But this time, they're looking at the right criminals. Agents moved toward Nathan and Joan. "This is insane," Nathan sputtered. "You can't." "I can. And I did." Fiona stepped closer to him. "You wanted me to disappear. You wanted me erased. But here's what you didn't understand, Nathan. You can't kill a woman who's already been destroyed. You can only create someone with nothing left to lose." Agents cuffed Nathan. Cuffed Joan. She was screaming, trying to blame Nathan. "It was his idea. I just went along with it. He manipulated me." "Save it for your trial," an agent said. Fiona watched them being led away. Watched Nathan's empire crumble in real time as investors fled. Reporters swarmed. Cameras captured every moment. In the chaos, she slipped out a side door. Lance was waiting in the hallway. "You did it." Fiona nodded. "It's done. How do you feel?" "Empty. Vindicated. Exhausted." Fiona leaned against the wall. "I thought I'd feel triumphant. But I just feel tired." Lance pulled her into his arms. "Then let's go home." Home. To Lance's house. To Helena. To the life Fiona had been building in the shadows. But first, there was one more thing she needed to do. The next day, Fiona's name was everywhere. News outlets running the story of her vindication. Social media exploding with outrage over her treatment. Public opinion flipping overnight. From criminal to victim to survivor. The court expedited her retrial. With the new evidence and Nathan's arrest, the prosecution withdrew all charges against Fiona. She was free. Officially, legally, completely free. But freedom felt strange. Like a coat that didn't quite fit. She'd been defined by her fight for so long. Now that it was over, she didn't know who she was supposed to be. Margaret Chin called. Offered to help Fiona reclaim her assets. The company's board voted to remove Nathan and investigate Joan's involvement. Fiona could have it all back. The money, the power, the empire. She didn't want it. "I just want my kids," she told Lance. "Then let's get them." But getting them back wasn't simple. "Why were you gone?" "Because..." Fiona chose her words carefully. "Because bad people hurt Mommy. But I'm here now. And I'm never leaving again. Never. Promise?" "Promise." They went inside. Sat on Lance's couch. The kids asked questions. Fiona answered as honestly as she could. Age appropriately. Helena appeared shyly from the kitchen. "Hi." Pascal looked at her. "Who are you?" "I'm Helena." She straightened up importantly. "I helped take care of your mom." Ruby's eyes widened. "You did?" "We both did," Lance said, appearing with hot chocolate. "Your mom's pretty amazing. But she missed you every single day." "We missed you too," Pascal said quietly. "We just didn't know." The next few months were about healing. Family therapy. Rebuilding trust. Learning each other again. Pascal wanted to know everything. The truth about the arrest, the trial, the prison. Fiona told him. Careful not to traumatize him, but honest about what had happened. "Dad really did that?" he asked, his voice small. "He did," Fiona confirmed. "And it was wrong. What he did was wrong. But he's still our dad." "He is. And you can feel however you feel about that. Anger, sadness, confusion. All of it is okay." Ruby struggled differently. She'd been younger, more attached to Joan. The betrayal felt personal in a way she couldn't articulate. "I called her mom," Ruby whispered one night. "I loved her." "I know, baby. Does that make me bad?" "No." Fiona stroked her hair. "It makes you human. Joan was kind to you in her way. You're allowed to mourn that. Even if she did terrible things to me. I love you more." "I know. I love you too." Bella was the easiest and the hardest. She didn't remember Fiona. Every moment was building a relationship from scratch. But she was too. Resilient. Adaptable. Within weeks, she was climbing into Fiona's lap, asking for stories, calling her mama. And through it all, Lance and Helena were there. The kids adored Helena. She bossed them around like the big sister she'd never been but always wanted to be. And Fiona and Lance. They were careful. Slow. The kids needed stability, not more upheaval. But the feelings were there. Growing. Undeniable. 6 months after the gala, Fiona had her own place. A house big enough for her and the kids. Not a mansion, just a home. She started a foundation for wrongfully convicted women. Used her story to advocate for justice reform. Turned her pain into purpose. Life was good, not perfect. Healing wasn't linear, but good. One evening, Fiona was on her porch. Sunset painting the sky. The kids inside laughing over some game. Car pulled up. Lance and Helena. Helena ran up with wildflowers. "We picked these for you. They're perfect, sweetheart." Fiona hugged her. "Thank you." Helena ran inside to join Pascal, Ruby, and Bella. Lance walked up slowly. Stood at the bottom of the porch steps. "You look happy," he said. "I'm getting there. The kids seem good. They're healing. We all are." Silence. Comfortable but waited. Lance climbed the steps. Stood close. "Fiona." He took a breath. "I know you've been through hell. I know you need time with your kids. Time to just be a family. But I need you to know." His phone rang. He tried to ignore it. "I should just answer it," Fiona said. "It's okay." Lance pulled out his phone. Looked at the screen. And froze. His face went pale. Confused. Shocked. "What is it?" Fiona asked. Lance stared at the phone like it was a ghost. "It's a number I haven't seen in 3 years." "Who?" He looked at her, and there was fear in his eyes. "My wife." The world stopped. Wife. The one who had abandoned him and Helena 3 years ago. The one who'd disappeared without a trace. "Your wife?" Fiona's voice was barely a whisper. "The one who left." Lance nodded, still staring at the phone. "She hasn't called. Hasn't contacted us at all." "Why now?" The phone stopped ringing. Immediately, a text came through. Lance read it. His expression shifted from shock to something like dread. "What does it say?" Lance's voice was hollow. "I'm back. We need to talk. About Helena. About us. I made a mistake." Inside the house, Helena laughed at something Ruby said. Lance looked from his phone to Fiona to the house where his daughter was playing. "What are you going to do?" Fiona asked, even though part of her didn't want to know the answer. I don't know." Lance ran a hand through his hair. "She left. She abandoned us. She doesn't get to just come back and—" "But she did." Fiona's heart was breaking even as she said it. "She came back. And she's Helena's mother. You're not going to—" Lance reached for her hand. "Fiona, this doesn't change." "It changes everything," Fiona said gently. She pulled her hand back. "You need to figure out what this means. For you. For Helena. I can't be in the middle of that." "But Lance." Fiona smiled even though it hurt. "You gave me everything. You believed me when no one else would. You fought for me. You saved my life. Now you need to focus on yours. On Helena. On what's best for her. What if I know what's best for her? Do you? Or do you just know what you want?" Lance had no answer. Inside, Helena called out, "Daddy, come play with us." "Go," Fiona said softly. "We'll talk later." "Fiona, go." Lance hesitated. Then he walked inside. Fiona stood on her porch, watching the sunset, feeling like something precious had just slipped through her fingers. She'd survived Nathan's betrayal, prison, the loss of her children, the destruction of her entire life. She'd clawed her way back from nothing. But this, watching Lance walk away, knowing his past had just caught up with him, knowing she might lose him before they'd even begun. This was a different kind of pain. Not destruction, just loss. She sat down on the porch steps and let herself feel it. Inside, her children were laughing. Safe. Home. Hers. She'd won. She'd gotten them back. She'd cleared her name. She'd destroyed the people who destroyed her. But sitting there in the fading light, Fiona realized something. Victory doesn't mean you don't still lose things along the way. And now, because I know you're sitting there with a million questions, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think Lance should give his wife a second chance? Do you think people who abandon their families deserve to come back? And if you were Fiona, would you wait for him or walk away? Hit that subscribe button if you want to know what happens next. Because trust me, this story isn't over. Not by a long shot. And let me know where you're watching from. Or just say, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because here's the truth. Fiona fought her way out of hell. She reclaimed her life, her children, her identity. She learned that trust without verification is just stupidity. That love doesn't mean blind faith. That rock bottom isn't the end. It's the foundation you build your comeback on. She learned that the people who destroy you don't define you. How you rise defines you. And now, just when she thought she could finally start building something new, the past came knocking. Not her past. Lance's. Is it fair? No. Is it just? Probably not. But it's real. And real life doesn't care about fair. It only cares about what you do next. Fiona survived Nathan and Joan's betrayal. She survived prison, childbirth alone, losing her children, losing everything. The question is, can she survive losing Lance? Or will she have to accept that some battles aren't meant to be won? That some people are worth fighting for, but some fights aren't yours to fight? What would you do? Think about it. This is Mr. Hearthline, reminding you that your comeback is always bigger than your setback. Your story isn't over just because the chapter was painful. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go. But sometimes it's holding on. Fiona will have to decide which one this is. Until next time.